She saw everyone ignore the billionaire's deaf daughter, until the billionaire recognized his late wife's sign language phrase, and he froze. The marble floor of the Emerald Grand Hotel's 10th floor hallway gleamed like liquid gold under the crystal chandeliers, but Emily Carter barely noticed anymore. She'd stopped seeing beauty in places like this about 6 months ago, right around the time her knees started aching from kneeling on cold stone for 8 hours a day. At 22, Emily had the kind of face that should have turned heads, deep brown eyes that caught the light just right, dark hair she kept pulled back in a simple bun, and a quiet prettiness that poverty hadn't quite managed to erase. But here, in this temple of wealth and excess, she might as well have been invisible. The guests in their $1,000 shoes stepped around her without a glance, their conversations about stock portfolios and vacation homes flowing over her head like she was just another piece of furniture. She didn't mind, really. Being invisible had its advantages. Emily dipped her brush into the bucket of cleaning solution, the sharp chemical smell burning her nostrils. Her hands, red and chapped despite the cheap lotion she slathered on every night, moved in practiced motions. Scrub, rinse, wipe, move forward 6 inches, repeat. It was mindless work, the kind that let her thoughts drift to places she usually tried to avoid, like the dreams. They'd been coming more frequently lately, fragments of something that felt like memory but couldn't possibly be real. A woman's voice singing a lullaby she didn't recognize, the scent of jasmine so vivid she'd wake up searching for the source. Hands, soft, gentle hands, moving in patterns that made no sense. Shapes in the air that her conscious mind couldn't interpret, but her sleeping self seemed to understand perfectly. Watch it. Emily jerked back as a man in an expensive suit nearly kicked over her bucket. He didn't apologize, didn't even break stride, just kept walking, his phone pressed to his ear. She'd learned not to expect apologies. Emily had exactly 3 clear memories from before the seat. Mary's orphanage, the feeling of being carried, the smell of something sweet, maybe perfume, maybe flowers, and the sensation of being loved. That last one was the cruelest because it meant she'd had something once and lost it. Sister Agnes, the orphanage director, used to tell her she'd been found on their doorstep at 4 years old, with nothing but a note that said Emily Carter and a cheap plastic bracelet. No birth certificate, no family history, no explanation, just a little girl who'd cried for 3 days straight before finally going silent. The system had kept her fed and clothed for 14 years. At 18, they'd handed her a voucher for a shared apartment and wished her luck. She'd bounced between temp jobs before landing this gig through an agency that supplied workers to high-end hotels. Pure chance that it was the Emerald Grand. Pure chance that would change everything. The sound of a child crying pulled Emily from her thoughts. Not a bratty tantrum. She'd heard plenty of those. This was different, desperate, scared. She looked up to see a little girl, maybe 9 or 10, standing near the elevator bank, brown hair in neat braids, expensive clothes, and blue eyes wide with panic. 3 hotel staff members stood nearby, looking annoyed rather than concerned. "I don't know what she wants," one of them was saying. "She's not talking. Probably just lost," another replied with a shrug. "Parents will show up." The little girl was making gestures with her hands, quick and frantic, but the staff members weren't paying attention. One of them actually waved her away. "Go sit down somewhere, kid, we're busy." Something twisted in Emily's chest. She'd been that scared child once, trying desperately to communicate while adults ignored her. Before she could think about it, she pushed herself up from the floor and walked toward the little girl. The child's eyes locked onto hers immediately, and Emily felt something she couldn't quite name. A pull, like invisible threads connecting them. The feeling was so strong it almost made her dizzy. "Hey," Emily said softly, crouching down to the girl's eye level. "Are you okay? Are you lost?" The little girl's hands moved again, faster now, more insistent, and then something impossible happened. Emily's hands lifted of their own accord and began to move in response, shapes, patterns, gestures she'd never learned but somehow knew. Her fingers formed signs with a precision that shocked her. She'd never studied sign language, had barely even seen it used, but her body moved with certainty, like it was remembering something her mind had forgotten. "Where's your dad? What's wrong?" The signs came from somewhere deep inside her, bypassing conscious thought entirely. The little girl's face transformed. The panic melted into relief. Her hands moved quickly. Lost. Can't find Papa. Scared. It's okay. Emily signed back, the movements flowing naturally despite the impossibility of it all. We'll find him. But before the girl could respond, the elevator doors burst open with a sharp ding. A man emerged. Tall, maybe late 40s, with the kind of presence that made people instinctively step aside. Expensive suit, perfectly styled salt and pepper hair, and a face twisted with worry. His eyes scanned the hallway frantically until they landed on the little girl. Sophie. The relief on his face lasted exactly 3 seconds. Then his gaze shifted to Emily, still crouched beside his daughter, and his expression changed to something Emily couldn't quite read. Shock, recognition, but he was staring at her hands. Specifically, at the sign she'd just made to Sophie, a gesture she'd completed without thinking. 3 gentle taps over her heart, followed by a delicate circle in the air with her index finger. The man's face went completely white. He looked like he'd just seen a ghost. Emily slowly stood up, suddenly very aware that she was still in her cleaning uniform, that her hands were red and raw from chemicals. She took a step back, confused by the intensity of his stare. "I'm sorry," she stammered. "Your daughter seemed lost, and I just wanted to help. Where did you learn that sign?" His voice came out rough, barely above a whisper. "What? That sign? 3 taps, then a circle? Where did you learn it?" I don't know. I didn't learn it. It just..." She looked at her own hands like they belonged to someone else. "It just happened. I don't even know sign language. It was just instinct." The man stared at her for a long moment, his eyes traveling over her face with an intensity that made her want to run, studying every feature like he was searching for something specific. "What's your name?" he asked quietly. Emily Carter. I work here. I'm with the cleaning crew." "How old are you, Emily?" The question was so unexpected that she answered without thinking. 22. "Why?" Something in his expression cracked. He looked at Sophie, then back at Emily, then at Sophie again like he was trying to solve an impossible equation. "Mr. Hayes?" One of the staff members hurried over. "I'm so sorry, sir. We didn't realize Sophie had wandered off." "Hayes." The name clicked. Michael Hayes, owner of Hayes International Hotels, owner of this building, her boss's boss's boss. She'd just gotten involved with the man who could have her fired with a snap of his fingers. "You 3 report to HR tomorrow," Michael said absently, still staring at Emily. "We'll discuss how you treat children who need help. And you," he turned back to Emily, "don't go anywhere. I need to talk to you." It wasn't a request. Emily's heart hammered against her ribs as Michael Hayes continued to stare at her like she was some kind of puzzle he couldn't solve. Sophie had wrapped her arms around her father's waist, but his attention remained locked on Emily with an intensity that made her skin prickle. "I really should get back to work," Emily said, taking another step backward. Her bucket and brush sat abandoned on the marble floor a few feet away, a small puddle of dirty water spreading slowly across the gleaming surface. She'd probably get written up for that. "I'm sorry if I..." "How long have you worked here?" Michael interrupted, his voice still carrying that strange, strained quality. "About 8 months, sir," she added, the honorific awkwardly, unsure of the protocol for addressing billionaires who were looking at you like you'd just performed a miracle. 8 months, he repeated, almost to himself, his jaw clenched, and Emily saw something flicker across his face. Pain, maybe, or regret. And before that why does it matter? The question came out sharper than she intended, but fear was quickly morphing into irritation. She hadn't done anything wrong. She'd helped a lost kid. That shouldn't warrant an interrogation. Michael seemed to realize he was coming on too strong. He took a breath, visibly trying to compose himself. When he spoke again, his tone was more measured, though Emily could still hear the tremor underneath. "I'm sorry. You're right. This must seem very strange." He glanced down at Sophie, who was watching the exchange with curious blue eyes. His hand moved to stroke her hair, a gesture so tender it made Emily's chest ache with an emotion she couldn't name. "It's just that sign you made, the one with the 3 taps and the circle. I told you. I don't know where it came from. I don't even know sign language." Emily wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold despite the hotel's perfect climate control. "My hands just moved. That's not possible." "Well, it happened anyway." They stared at each other for a moment. An impasse. Sophie's hands started moving, breaking the tension. Michael watched, then translated, his voice softer now. "She says you're nice, that you understood her when no one else did." He paused. "She wants to know your name." Emily's irritation melted slightly. She crouched down again, meeting Sophie at eye level. The little girl smiled at her, and something warm unfurled in Emily's chest. "Emily," she said, pointing to herself. Then, without thinking, her hands moved again, spelling out the letters in what she somehow knew was the sign language alphabet. Emili. How did she know that? She'd never learned this. It was like her body had its own knowledge, separate from her conscious mind, like muscle memory for something she'd never practiced. Sophie's face lit up. Her hands flew in response, too fast for Emily to catch. But she understood the emotion behind them. Joy, excitement, connection. "She says you're like her," Michael translated, his voice rough. "That you speak her language. I don't, though. I really don't. This is insane." Emily stood up abruptly. Running her hands through her hair and dislodging her bun, dark strands fell around her face. "I should go. I need to finish my shift." "Wait." Michael reached out, then seemed to think better of it and let his hand drop. "Please, just give me 5 minutes. There's something I need to understand." Emily wanted to refuse. Every instinct screamed at her to grab her cleaning supplies and disappear into the service corridors where she belonged, where life made sense and billionaires didn't stare at her like she held the answers to questions she didn't understand. But something in his face stopped her. Desperation, hope, fear, a cocktail of emotions so raw it was almost painful to witness. 5 minutes, she agreed reluctantly. Michael nodded, then said something to Sophie in sign language. The little girl's face fell, but she nodded and moved to sit on one of the plush benches lining the hallway. Michael gestured to a spot a few feet away, far enough for privacy, but close enough that Sophie could still see them. "That sign you made?" Michael began, once they were relatively alone. "The 3 taps and the circle. My wife invented it." Emily blinked. "Okay, my late wife," he clarified, and the pain in his voice was unmistakable. "She died 10 years ago, and the sign, it was something she created for our daughter, a private thing. Just between them, she never taught it to anyone else. Not to me, not to family, not to friends. It was theirs alone." A chill ran down Emily's spine. "I don't understand what you're saying. I'm saying that sign should be impossible for you to know." Michael's hands were shaking again. He shoved them into his pockets. Unless what?" He looked at her for a long moment, and Emily could see him wrestling with something. Finally, he asked, "Do you know who your parents are, Emily?" The question hit her like a physical blow. She took an involuntary step back. "No," she said quietly. "I'm an orphan. I was left at St. Mary's when I was 4. No note, no explanation, just a name. Emily Carter. And nothing else." Something in Michael's expression shifted. His face went from pale to completely bloodless. 4 years old, he whispered. "St. Mary's in Brooklyn. How did you—" Emily's pulse spiked. "What's going on? Why are you asking me this?" Michael pulled out his phone with trembling hands. He scrolled through something, then turned the screen toward her. It showed a photograph of a little girl, maybe 3 or 4 years old, with dark hair and brown eyes. She was laughing, her face tilted toward the sun, caught in a moment of pure joy. "This is my daughter," Michael said. "Catherine. She was taken from us 18 years ago, kidnapped from our home. We searched for years, spent millions on investigators, but we never found her." Emily stared at the photo, her mind refusing to process what he was implying. "I'm sorry that happened to your family, but I don't see what that has to do with—" "Look at her eyes. Emily, look at her face." "I'm looking. It's a picture of a child. Look at yourself." He pulled up the camera app and held it up like a mirror. Emily saw her own reflection, tired and confused, cleaning uniform rumpled, hair falling messily around her face. And beside it, on the screen, the photo of that laughing little girl. The resemblance was striking. The eyes, the shape of the face, the way the cheekbones caught the light. Not identical, but eerily similar. "That doesn't mean anything," Emily said, but her voice sounded hollow even to her own ears. "Lots of people look alike. Coincidence. And the sign, the one my wife invented specifically for Catherine, that no one else in the world should know, is that coincidence too?" Emily's legs felt weak. She reached out to steady herself against the wall, the cool surface grounding her. "This is crazy. You're saying you think I'm your daughter? That's impossible. I would remember. You were 4 years old, traumatized. The mind does strange things to protect itself." Michael took a step closer. "You said you have fragments of memories. What do you remember?" "Nothing, just impressions, feelings." But even as she said it, Emily felt something stirring in the back of her mind. That voice singing, the scent of jasmine, those hands making shapes in the air, shapes that now seemed less random and more like sign language. "Oh God, I need to sit down," Emily said faintly. Michael quickly guided her to the bench where Sophie sat. The little girl immediately moved closer, her small hand slipping into Emily's. The gesture was so natural, so instinctive, that Emily found herself squeezing back before she realized what she was doing. "I know this is overwhelming," Michael said, sitting on her other side. "I can barely believe it myself. But Emily, I need you to understand. If there's even a chance that you're Catherine, if there's even the smallest possibility, how would we even know?" Emily interrupted. "You can't just decide someone is your long-lost daughter because they vaguely look like an old photo and somehow know a random sign." "DNA test," Michael said immediately. "We could know for certain within a few days." Emily's mind reeled. A DNA test. Scientific proof. It should have felt like a simple solution, but the implications terrified her. If it was negative, she'd go back to being invisible. Emily Carter, the orphan cleaning girl. But if it was positive, who was she? "I don't know," she whispered. "This is too much. You can't just drop this on someone and expect—" I know it's too much." Michael ran a hand through his hair, making it stand up at odd angles. For a moment, he looked less like an intimidating billionaire and more like a desperate father. "But I've spent 18 years wondering what happened to my daughter. 18 years of guilt and grief and what-ifs. And now you appear, making a sign that should be impossible. Looking like—" He stopped, his voice breaking. "Please, just take the test. If I'm wrong, I'll leave you alone. You have my word." Sophie's hand squeezed Emily's again, and Emily looked down at the little girl. Those blue eyes held such hope, such innocent belief that everything would be okay. When had anyone ever looked at Emily like she mattered? Like she was more than just another invisible worker, another face in the crowd, another orphan without a story. "Okay," Emily heard herself say. "I'll take the test." Michael's breath released in a rush. Thank you, Emily. I'll arrange everything. The best lab, completely private, expedited results. But if it's negative," Emily interrupted, finding her voice again, "you leave me alone. I go back to my life. No more questions. No more staring at me like I'm a ghost. Deal." "Deal," Michael agreed immediately. Emily nodded, trying to ignore the way her hands were shaking, the way her heart was racing, the way everything she thought she knew about herself suddenly felt like it was built on sand. Sophie signed something, and Michael smiled sadly. "She says she's glad you're here." Emily looked at the little girl, this child who might be her sister, which was impossible, which couldn't be real, and felt tears burning behind her eyes. "Me too," she whispered, not sure if she meant it or if she was just too overwhelmed to say anything else. The DNA test took less than 5 minutes. A nurse Michael hired arrived at the hotel within an hour, discreet and professional, swabbing the inside of Emily's cheek with the kind of efficiency that suggested she did this sort of thing often. Emily wondered how many paternity tests and family mysteries this woman had witnessed. How many lives she'd seen change with a simple cotton swab. "Results in 4 days, the nurse said, packing up her kit. "We'll email them directly to Mr. Hayes. 4 days. 96 hours for Emily's entire world to potentially shift on its axis." Michael had offered to let her stay in one of the hotel's guest rooms while they waited, but Emily refused. She needed space, needed to be somewhere that felt real. So she went back to her cramped studio apartment in Queens, sharing the space with her 2 roommates who worked night shifts and barely spoke English, and tried to pretend everything was normal. It wasn't normal. Nothing was normal. Emily couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw that photograph of little Catherine Hayes, laughing in the sunshine. She saw Michael's desperate face. She felt Sophie's small hand in hers. And underneath it all, those fragmented memories she'd spent years dismissing as dreams started demanding attention. The singing voice. What if it wasn't just a dream? What if it was real? A mother singing lullabies, the jasmine scent. What if she'd actually smelled it somewhere? In a garden, maybe. In a home that had been hers. Those hands making shapes. Sign language. Catherine's mother teaching her daughter to communicate with a little sister who couldn't hear. On the 3rd night, Emily gave up on sleep entirely and did something she'd never done before. She Googled, Catherine Hayes kidnapping. The results were overwhelming. Hundreds of articles, news coverage spanning years, society page photos of the Hayes family before tragedy struck. Emily's hands shook as she scrolled through them, absorbing details that felt both foreign and eerily familiar. 4-year-old Catherine Hayes vanished from the family's Upper East Side mansion on the night of August 15th. Police suspect the kidnapping was an inside job. Devastated parents Michael and Isabel Hayes offer $5 million reward for any information. 6 months after daughter's disappearance, Isabel Hayes remains hospitalized for severe depression. Businessman Michael Hayes vows to never stop searching for his missing daughter. And then, 8 years after Catherine's disappearance, the articles shifted. Isabel Hayes, 38, dies of heart failure. Friends say she never recovered from losing her daughter. Emily stared at the obituary photo. Isabel Hayes had been beautiful. Dark hair, warm brown eyes, a smile that probably lit up rooms before grief dimmed it forever. She looked younger than 38, but the article mentioned her death was attributed to complications from long-term depression and stress. She'd died of a broken heart. Literally. Emily slammed her laptop shut, bile rising in her throat. If she was Catherine, then this woman had died because of her disappearance, had grieved herself to death over a daughter who'd been alive the whole time, just invisible, scrubbing floors in an orphanage and later in hotels while her mother's heart gave out from sorrow. The guilt was crushing even though Emily knew, logically, that none of it could possibly be her fault. She'd been 4 years old, a victim, not a perpetrator, but logic didn't stop the nausea. The 4th day arrived like an executioner. Emily called in sick to work. She couldn't face the Emerald Grand, couldn't walk those marble hallways knowing what might be revealed. Her phone rang at 2 p.m. Michael Hayes. Emily stared at the screen for 5 rings before finally answering. Hello? Emily? His voice was thick, rough, like he'd been crying. Can you come to my office? Please, I have the results. Just tell me over the phone. She wasn't sure she could move, let alone travel to Manhattan. I need to see you. I need to... He paused. Please. Something in his tone told her everything she needed to know. If the test had been negative, he wouldn't sound like that. Wouldn't be pleading. I'll be there in an hour, Emily whispered. The Hayes International headquarters occupied 3 floors of a gleaming skyscraper in Midtown. Emily had never been inside. Why would she? Cleaning staff entered through service entrances. Not marble lobbies with waterfall features and modern art installations. But today, she walked through the front doors like she belonged there. The receptionist, clearly briefed, sent her straight up to the top floor. Michael's personal assistant, a sharp-looking woman in her 50s, met her at the elevator with an expression that was equal parts curiosity and sympathy. He's waiting for you, she said simply, gesturing to massive double doors. Emily's hands were ice cold as she pushed them open. Michael's office was enormous, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park, sleek furniture that probably cost more than Emily made in a year, and sitting areas that looked like something from an interior design magazine. But Emily barely noticed any of it because Michael was standing in the center of the room, holding a manila folder, tears streaming down his face. It's you, he said, his voice breaking. Catherine, you're my daughter. You're really my daughter. The folder slipped from his fingers, papers scattering across the expensive carpet. Emily saw numbers and technical terms she didn't understand. But one phrase stood out in bold, 99.9% probability of paternal relationship. The room tilted. Emily grabbed the back of a chair to steady herself. How? She managed. How did this happen? Who took me? Why? Michael moved toward her but stopped when she flinched back. He held up his hands, showing he meant no harm, then bent to gather the scattered papers. Among them was another folder, thicker, older looking. The investigators I hired after you agreed to the DNA test. They worked around the clock. He opened the second folder with shaking hands. They found her. The woman who took you? Margaret Price. The name meant nothing to Emily. Who? Our housekeeper. She'd been with us for 3 years. Isabel trusted her completely. Michael's face twisted with something between rage and agony. Margaret had a son, Ethan, 26, drug addict, deep in debt to some very dangerous people. They threatened to kill him if he didn't pay up. Emily sank into the chair, her legs no longer able to support her weight. She took me for ransom. That was the plan. But 3 days after she kidnapped you, Ethan was murdered by the dealers he owed money to. Michael's voice was hollow, reciting facts like they were the only thing keeping him anchored. Margaret panicked. She couldn't return you without being arrested for kidnapping. She couldn't keep you because you were all over the news, so she left me at St. Mary's. Emily finished, the pieces clicking together with sickening clarity. With fake papers, a fake name. Emily Carter. She chose a common name, one that wouldn't stand out. No birth certificate, no trail to follow. Michael looked at her with such profound sorrow it hurt to witness. We searched everywhere. We had the FBI, private investigators, psychics, anyone who claimed they could help, but we never thought to check orphanages with different names. We were looking for Catherine Hayes. We never imagined she'd been erased completely. What happened to Margaret? She fled to Houston, died in a car accident 6 months after abandoning you. The secret died with her. Michael's hands clenched into fists. For 18 years I thought you were dead, or worse, suffering somewhere, being hurt, crying for us while we couldn't find you. And Isabel, his voice cracked completely. She never recovered. The grief killed her. The doctors said heart failure. But we both know what really happened. She died because she lost you. The guilt Emily had felt while reading the articles came roaring back tenfold. I was here the whole time. I was in Brooklyn, just a few miles away. You were 4 years old, Michael said fiercely. This is not your fault. None of this is your fault. The blame lies with Margaret, with the system that didn't catch the falsified documents, with me for not protecting you better. His voice broke. God, Catherine, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I couldn't keep you safe. Catherine. He kept calling her that, but Emily didn't feel like Catherine. She felt like Emily, confused and overwhelmed and terrified. I don't remember, she whispered. I don't remember you or Isabel or any of it. Just fragments. The singing, the jasmine, the signs. That's all I have. You were traumatized. The mind protects itself. Michael took a cautious step closer. But maybe, with time, the memories will come back. Or maybe they won't. Either way, you're my daughter. You're alive. That's all that matters. But it wasn't all that mattered. And they both knew it. Emily, Catherine, whoever she was, had lost 18 years, had grown up alone, unloved, invisible, had scrubbed floors in the very hotel her father owned, had been stepped over and ignored by the man who'd been searching for her. I worked there for 8 months, Emily said, and suddenly she was furious. 8 months in your hotel. Did you ever once look at me? Did you ever see me? Michael's face went gray. No. God help me. No. You were invisible to me like everyone else in a uniform is invisible to people like me. That's my failure. My blindness. I want to leave. Emily stood abruptly. I need to process this. I need time. Of course, whatever you need. Michael pulled out a business card, wrote something on the back. This is my personal cell. Call anytime, day or night. And please, let me help you. Financially, I mean, you shouldn't have to work at the hotel anymore. You shouldn't have to live in... I don't want your money. Emily cut him off. Not yet. Maybe not ever. I just need space. She walked toward the door, but Michael's voice stopped her. Catherine, Emily, whoever you feel you are right now, you have a sister, Sophie. She's been asking about you every day. She wants to see you. Emily turned back. Why would she care? She doesn't know me. She feels the same connection you did. That pull. She knew something special happened when you met. Michael's eyes were pleading. You don't have to decide anything about us. But Sophie, she's innocent in all of this. Would you at least consider meeting with her? Emily thought of those blue eyes. That small hand slipping into hers so trustingly. Something in her chest ached. I'll think about it, she managed, then fled before the tears could start. She made it to the elevator before breaking down completely. Emily didn't go home. Instead, she found herself on a subway heading to Brooklyn, her body moving on autopilot toward the only place that had ever felt remotely like home. St. Mary's Orphanage looked exactly as she remembered. A squat brick building with bars on the windows, paint peeling from the front door. A small playground with rusted swings in the back. Sister Agnes was in the office, older now, her hair completely white, but her eyes still sharp behind wire-rimmed glasses. She looked up when Emily knocked, and recognition flickered immediately across her weathered face. Emily Carter, I wondered if you'd come back someday. Can we talk? Emily's voice came out smaller than she intended. Sister Agnes gestured to the worn chair across from her desk. Of course, child. You look like you've seen a ghost. Something like that. Emily sat, her hands twisting in her lap. Sister Agnes, do you remember when I arrived here? What exactly happened? The old nun's expression grew cautious. That was 18 years ago. My memory isn't what it used to be. Please, I need to know. Sister Agnes studied her for a long moment, then sighed. You were left on our doorstep early in the morning, August 20th. A woman brought you, middle-aged, anxious-looking, didn't give her name, said she'd found you wandering and couldn't care for you herself. She had papers with her, or what looked like papers. A note saying your name was Emily Carter. No birth certificate, no family information. Did you call the police? Reporter. We did. They came, took a report, but there wasn't much to go on. The woman was long gone, and you... Sister Agnes's face softened with remembered pain. You were so traumatized, child. You cried for 3 days straight, calling for your mama, making those strange hand gestures we didn't understand. We thought maybe you'd been with a deaf family, but we couldn't be sure. Eventually, you just stopped talking, stopped trying to communicate. It took months before you'd speak again, and even then you never mentioned your past. Emily felt sick. I was kidnapped. My real name is Catherine Hayes, the woman who brought me here, Margaret Price. She took me from my family and then abandoned me when her plan fell apart. Sister Agnes's hand flew to her mouth. Sweet Lord, the Hayes kidnapping. I remember it on the news. The poor family searching. She stood abruptly, moving to a filing cabinet. We keep records, even the old ones, if there's anything that might help. It's too late for that. I already know the truth. DNA test confirmed it. Emily's voice was hollow. I just needed to understand how it happened, how one person could destroy so many lives so easily. Sister Agnes pulled out a thin folder, yellowed with age. Inside were a few documents, the intake form from 18 years ago, notes from social workers, a psychological evaluation from when Emily was 6 that noted signs of severe trauma and possible dissociative amnesia. You were such a sweet child, Sister Agnes said softly, sitting back down. Quiet, helpful, always trying to take care of the younger kids. I used to wonder what had happened to make you so old before your time. I lost everything, Emily said. My parents, my home, my identity, and my mother, Isabel. She died because of it, grieved herself to death. Oh, child. Sister Agnes reached across the desk, taking Emily's hand. That's not your burden to carry. You were a victim. Was I? The question burst out of Emily before she could stop it. Because right now, I feel like I'm the one who destroyed everything. If I'd remembered, if I'd fought harder, if I'd told someone. You were 4 years old and traumatized. Your mind did what it needed to do to survive. Sister Agnes squeezed her hand firmly. Now the question is, what will you do with this truth? That was the question, wasn't it? Emily had a father who wanted her back, a sister who wanted to know her, a fortune that was apparently her birthright. She could step into Catherine Hayes's life, claim everything that had been stolen from her, but the thought terrified her more than anything else. I don't know who I am anymore, Emily whispered. Am I Emily Carter, the orphan, or Catherine Hayes, the heiress? How do I just erase 22 years of being one person and become someone else? Maybe you don't have to choose, Sister Agnes suggested gently. Maybe you can be both, the girl who survived and the girl who was lost. They're both you. Emily wanted to believe that, but it felt impossible. Emily and Catherine seemed like two completely different people, living in completely different worlds. How could they possibly coexist in one body, one life? Her phone buzzed. A text from Michael. Please don't shut us out. Whatever you need. We'll give you space. But Sophie asks about you every day. She misses you. Attached was a photo. Sophie holding a sign she'd clearly made herself with markers and poster board. Please come back, Emily. I miss you. Her smile was hopeful but tentative, like she wasn't sure her message would be received. Something cracked in Emily's chest. I have a sister, she said, showing Sister Agnes the photo. 10 years old, deaf. She was born 6 months before Isabel died. I never even knew she existed until 4 days ago. Sister Agnes smiled. She's beautiful, and she clearly loves you already. She doesn't know me. She just knows some fantasy version. The lost sister who came back. What if I can't be what she needs? What if I disappoint her? What if you don't? Sister Agnes countered. What if this is your chance to have what was stolen from you? Family, belonging, love. Love. The word felt foreign. Emily had spent so long being invisible, untethered, alone. The idea of being seen, of mattering to someone, was both intoxicating and terrifying. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was an email notification. She opened it reluctantly and felt her breath catch. It was from a private investigation firm. Addressed to Michael but CC'd to her, the subject line read, Additional information, Margaret Price investigation. Complete timeline. Emily opened the attachment with trembling fingers. The document was extensive, detailing Margaret's life with brutal efficiency. Born in Queens, worked various domestic positions, hired by the Hayes family 3 years before the kidnapping. One son, Ethan Price. History of drug abuse and petty crime. The report included a photo of Margaret, a tired-looking woman in her 50s with sad eyes and work-worn hands. She looked ordinary, not evil, not monstrous, just desperate and broken. The timeline showed everything. Ethan's escalating debts, threats from dealers, Margaret's growing panic, then the kidnapping on August 15th, Ethan's murder on August 18th, shot 3 times in an alley in the Bronx, left to bleed out, Margaret's breakdown, her flight to Houston 2 days after abandoning Emily at St. Mary's, and then, 6 months later, Margaret Price, 54, killed in single-vehicle accident on I-10. Toxicology report showed elevated blood alcohol. Death ruled accidental possible suicide. She'd drunk herself into oblivion and driven off the road. The woman who destroyed the Hayes family had destroyed herself in the process. Emily should have felt anger, should have wanted vengeance against this woman who'd stolen her life. But all she felt was a hollow sadness. Margaret had been desperate, trying to save her son. She'd made a terrible choice and paid for it with everything. No one had won. Everyone had lost. The woman who took me, Emily said quietly, looking up at Sister Agnes. She's dead too. Died 6 months after leaving me here. Everything she did, all the pain she caused, it was for nothing. Her son died anyway. She died. Isabel died. Everyone died except me and Michael. And Sophie, Sister Agnes added. Don't forget Sophie. She was born from love, even in the middle of all that grief. Isabel's last gift to her family. Emily looked at the photo again. Sophie's hopeful smile, her hand-drawn sign, her innocent belief that Emily would come back. Maybe Sister Agnes was right. Maybe this wasn't about choosing between Emily and Catherine. Maybe it was about choosing between staying invisible and letting herself be seen. between remaining alone and accepting family, between running from the truth and facing it, no matter how terrifying. She pulled out her phone and, before she could overthink it, typed a message to Michael. "I'd like to see Sophie, tomorrow, if that's okay. Somewhere neutral. Not the mansion. Maybe the park." The response came within seconds. "Yes. Thank you. Central Park. Bethesda Fountain. 2 p.m. I'll bring Sophie. You don't have to see me if you don't want to. I can wait at a distance." Emily appreciated that. She wasn't ready to face Michael yet. Wasn't ready to call him Dad, or accept everything that came with being Catherine Hayes. But Sophie was different. Sophie was innocent, was hopeful, was a sister who wanted to know her. 2 p.m. works, Emily typed back. "You can stay. We should probably talk anyway." She put her phone away and looked at Sister Agnes. "I'm going to meet my sister tomorrow." "Good," the nun smiled. "That's a step forward, child. One step at a time is all anyone can manage." Emily nodded, but inside she felt like she was standing at the edge of a cliff, about to jump without knowing if there was water below or just rocks. Everything she'd believed about herself, about her life, about who she was. It had all been built on lies. Now she had to decide whether to cling to those comfortable lies or embrace a truth that could either save her or destroy her completely. Tomorrow, at Bethesda Fountain, she'd take the first step. After that, she'd figure out the rest, one step at a time. Central Park at 2 in the afternoon should have been peaceful. Joggers passing by, street musicians playing for tips, tourists taking photos. But Emily felt like she was walking to her own execution as she approached Bethesda Fountain. Sophie saw her first. The little girl shot up from the bench where she'd been sitting with Michael, her face splitting into a grin so wide it made Emily's chest ache. Before Michael could stop her, Sophie was running, full speed across the stone plaza, braids flying behind her. Emily barely had time to brace herself before Sophie crashed into her, arms wrapping around her waist in a hug that nearly knocked them both over. The girl was surprisingly strong for 10 years old, holding on like Emily might disappear if she let go. "Hey, Sophie," Emily said softly, her hands hovering awkwardly before finally settling on the girl's shoulders. "I missed you too." Sophie pulled back just enough to sign something rapidly, her face glowing with excitement. Emily caught maybe one word in 5, but the emotion was crystal clear. Joy, relief, love. "She says she knew you'd come back," Michael translated, approaching slowly like Emily was a wild animal he might spook. "She told me every day this week that you would." Emily looked at him properly for the first time since the DNA results. He looked terrible. Dark circles under his eyes, jaw shadowed with stubble like he'd forgotten to shave, suit rumpled like he'd slept in it, which he probably had. "You look like hell," Emily said bluntly. "I haven't slept much." Michael managed a weak smile. "Turns out finding your daughter after 18 years is not conducive to rest." Sophie was tugging on Emily's hand, pulling her toward the fountain. Emily let herself be led, grateful for the distraction. They sat on the edge of the fountain's basin, Sophie wedged between them, chattering away in signs that Michael patiently translated. "She wants to know where you've been living, if you're still at the hotel, if you have friends, if you like ice cream. Apparently that's very important." "Chocolate chip," Emily answered, and Sophie's face lit up. She signed something that made Michael laugh, the sound rusty but genuine. "She says that's her favorite too. She thinks that proves you're sisters." "DNA already proved that," Emily said, but there was no bite to it. She was too distracted watching Sophie. The way the sunlight caught in her hair, the expressiveness of her hands as she signed, the complete lack of judgment in her eyes. This was supposed to be harder. Meeting family was supposed to feel forced, awkward, like trying on clothes that didn't fit. But sitting here with Sophie felt oddly natural, like remembering how to do something she'd once known well. "Can I ask you something?" Emily said to Michael. "Why is she so accepting? I'm a stranger who showed up out of nowhere claiming to be her sister. Why isn't she skeptical or scared?" Michael's expression grew soft as he watched Sophie. "Because she's spent her whole life being underestimated and dismissed. People see the deafness first, the person second. But you saw her immediately. You communicated with her when no one else could be bothered to try. To Sophie, that matters more than DNA tests or blood relations. You treated her like she was worth listening to. The words hit Emily harder than they should have, because wasn't that exactly what she'd spent her whole life craving? To be seen, to be heard, to matter to someone. Sophie was signing again, more insistent now. Michael hesitated before translating. She wants to know if you're coming home, to the mansion. She wants to show you her room and teach you more signs and... He stopped, his voice catching. She wants you to stay. I can't, Emily said immediately. I have a job, an apartment, a life. A life scrubbing floors for minimum wage in a hotel you technically own. Michael's tone wasn't cruel, just tired. Catherine, you don't have to do that anymore. Don't call me that. The words came out sharper than Emily intended. I'm not Catherine. I don't know who Catherine is. I'm Emily. You're both, Michael said quietly. And Emily deserves better than what she's had. Sophie was watching them argue, her face falling. She signed something that made Michael wince. She wants to know if we're fighting because of her. No. Sweetie, no? Emily turned to Sophie, her hands moving instinctively into signs she was slowly beginning to remember. Not your fault. Never your fault. But the moment was broken. Emily stood abruptly, suddenly feeling claustrophobic despite the open space of the park. I need to go. Wait. Michael stood too. Please, just listen for a minute. I know this is overwhelming. I know you need time, but at least let me help you. You shouldn't have to work that job anymore. Shouldn't have to live in poverty. Emily's anger flared hot and sudden. That's what you were going to say, right? I shouldn't have to be poor anymore now that Daddy Warbucks showed up to save me. That's not what I meant, isn't it? Emily's voice rose, attracting stares from nearby tourists. She didn't care. You want to swoop in with your money and fix everything. Make it all better. Buy me a new life like I'm some kind of renovation project. But you can't buy back 18 years, Michael. You can't buy back my childhood or my mother, or the fact that I grew up thinking I was nobody. I know that. Michael's composure finally cracked. God, don't you think I know that? I would give everything I own to change what happened, but I can't. All I can do is try to make the future better, and you won't even let me do that. Sophie started crying silently, tears streaming down her face as she watched them yell. The sight stopped Emily cold. I'm sorry, Emily whispered, crouching down to Sophie's level. I'm so sorry, sweetie, I didn't mean to upset you. Sophie signed something through her tears, and Emily didn't need a translation to understand. Don't leave. Please don't leave. I'm not leaving, Emily said, even though part of her wanted to run. I need time to figure this out. Michael pulled out his phone, typed something, then showed her the screen. It was a bank account. Her name, Catherine Hayes, with a balance that made Emily's head spin. 8 figures, more money than she could spend in several lifetimes. This is your trust fund, Michael said quietly. It's been accruing interest for 18 years. It's yours, whether you ever speak to me again or not. Whether you decide to be Catherine or stay Emily or become someone entirely new, it's yours because you deserve to be taken care of and you weren't. And I can't fix that, but I can at least do this. Emily stared at the numbers, feeling dizzy. I don't want it. You don't have to use it. But it's there, so you never have to clean another floor unless you want to. So you never have to feel invisible again. Michael's voice was raw. Take it. Hate me if you need to. But take it. Please. Emily wanted to refuse on principle. Wanted to throw his money back in his face and prove she didn't need anyone. Didn't need him. But as she looked at that account balance, a horrible truth settled over her. She did need it. She was exhausted. Her body hurt from years of physical labor. Her hands were scarred from chemical burns. Her future stretched before her as an endless procession of minimum wage jobs and shared apartments and being invisible. She didn't want to be invisible anymore. Okay, Emily heard herself say, but there are conditions. Michael looked so relieved he might cry. Anything. I'm not moving into the mansion. Not yet. Maybe not ever. I need my own space. I'll buy you an apartment. Anywhere you want. No, I'll use the trust fund to rent something, on my own terms. Emily's jaw set stubbornly. And I'm not quitting my job immediately. I need to give notice. Do things properly. I don't just abandon people. Unlike someone who abandoned me. She didn't say, but the words hung in the air anyway. Okay, Michael agreed quickly. What else? Therapy for me, and probably for both of us together eventually, because this is messed up and we can't just pretend it's not. Already arranged. Best trauma specialist in New York. Emily looked at Sophie, who was watching hopefully through drying tears. And I'll see Sophie regularly, but on my schedule, when I'm ready. No pressure, no expectations. Sophie signed something that made Michael smile, despite everything. She says she'll wait as long as you need, but she hopes it won't be too long. Me too, kid, Emily said softly. Me too. They sat in silence for a while, the three of them at the fountain. Not quite a family, but not quite strangers anymore either. Emily knew this peace wouldn't last. There was too much pain, too much history, too many wounds that needed healing. But for now, in this moment, it was enough. Sophie leaned against Emily's shoulder, and Emily let her, feeling the weight of this small person who believed in her for no good reason, except that they shared blood and signs, and something intangible that felt like fate. Maybe Sister Agnes was right. Maybe she could be both Emily and Catherine. Maybe she didn't have to choose. But right now, sitting in Central Park with a father she couldn't quite accept and a sister she was learning to love, Emily felt like she was drowning. And she had no idea if anyone could save her from herself. The first therapy session was a disaster. Dr. Patricia Morrison came highly recommended, specialized in trauma, family reunification, identity issues. Her office in Tribeca was all soft lighting and comfortable chairs, designed to put people at ease, but Emily felt like she was sitting on broken glass the entire hour. Tell me how you're feeling about the revelation, Dr. Morrison asked, in that gentle, practiced tone therapists used. Fine, Emily lied. Emily. May I call you Emily? That's my name. Is it, Doctor? Morrison's expression was kind, but challenging. Because legally, your name is Catherine Hayes. How does that make you feel? Like I'm being erased? The words burst out before Emily could stop them. Everyone keeps calling me Catherine, talking about who I was as a child, what I should remember, what I should feel, but I don't remember being her. I only remember being me, Emily. And now everyone's acting like Emily doesn't matter, like she was just some placeholder until the real me could show up. That must be terrifying. It's infuriating. Emily's hands clenched into fists. I survived 18 years alone. I made something of myself despite having nothing. And now I'm supposed to just, pretend it didn't happen. Be grateful that I get to be rich now. Dr. Morrison made a note. Has anyone asked you to pretend? Emily thought about Michael's desperate attempts to connect. The way he kept sharing memories of baby Catherine, showing her photo albums and home videos of a child she didn't recognize, the expensive gifts that appeared at her new apartment, the one bedroom in Chelsea she'd rented with the trust fund money, still modest by Hayes standards but luxury to her. Just last week, he'd sent a complete wardrobe from Bergdorf Goodman, designer clothes, shoes, jewelry. Emily had stared at the boxes piled in her living room and felt sick. He was trying to dress her as Catherine Hayes, heir to a fortune, when she still felt like Emily Carter in secondhand jeans. He's trying, Emily admitted quietly. Michael, my father. The word felt wrong in her mouth. He's really trying, but everything he does makes me feel like I'm disappointing him. How so? Because I'm not her. The daughter he lost? I don't remember the bedtime stories or the family vacations or the inside jokes. When he shows me photos, I see a stranger. When he tells me about Isabel, my mother, I feel guilty that I can't grieve for someone I don't remember. Emily's voice cracked. He lost his wife because of what happened to me. She literally died of grief. How am I supposed to live with that? That wasn't your fault. Everyone keeps saying that, but it doesn't make it feel less true. They sat in silence for a moment before Dr. Morrison spoke again. What about Sophie? How do you feel about her? Emily's expression softened immediately. Sophie's different. She doesn't expect me to be anyone but who I am right now. She just wants to spend time with me, teach me signs, show me her favorite things. There's no pressure with her. That must be a relief. It is. She's the only good thing about this whole mess. Emily paused. Is that terrible? That I can love my 10-year-old sister but can't even look at my father without feeling angry? It's honest, Doctor, Morrison said simply. And honesty is where we start healing. But healing felt impossible when every day brought new complications. The media had gotten wind of the story. Someone at the DNA lab or the investigation firm had leaked it, and now Emily's face was plastered across tabloids and gossip sites. Cleaning girl to heiress. The miraculous return of Catherine Hayes. The photos were humiliating. Her in her cleaning uniform, Michael in his expensive suits, the contrast designed to maximize drama. Her co-workers at the hotel turned on her overnight. She'd given her 2 weeks' notice, trying to leave professionally, but the whispers followed her through every shift. Think she planned this whole thing? Probably seduced him, rich old man, young pretty girl, tale as old as time. Gold digger saw an opportunity and took it. Emily tried to ignore them, but the words burrowed under her skin. On her second-to-last shift, someone accidentally spilled an entire bucket of dirty mop water on her. The laughter that followed made it clear it was no accident. She'd gone home that night, stripped off her soaked uniform, and cried in the shower until the water ran cold. Michael, when he found out, wanted to sue them all, wanted to buy the hotel and fire everyone involved. Emily had to physically stop him from showing up at her workplace. "You can't fix everything with money," she'd shouted during their argument over the phone. "This is my problem. Let me handle it. They hurt you, and I'll survive. Just like I've survived everything else. Stop trying to rescue me." She'd hung up on him. He'd sent flowers the next day with a note. "I'm sorry. I'm trying to learn." The flowers sat on her kitchen counter, wilting slowly, a physical reminder of the impossible situation they were both navigating. Sophie was the only bright spot. She came to visit Emily's apartment 3 times a week, always with an interpreter since Emily's sign language was still rudimentary. They'd spend hours together, Sophie teaching her signs, showing her YouTube videos of deaf performers and activists, sharing her favorite books and movies with subtitles. "She talks about you constantly," the interpreter mentioned once. "At school, at home, you're her hero." Emily didn't feel like anyone's hero. She felt like she was drowning, going through the motions of a life that didn't fit. The nightmares started in week 3. Every night, Emily dreamed of a garden full of jasmine, a woman's face just out of focus, hands making signs she almost understood. She'd wake up gasping, tears on her face, feeling like she'd lost something vital but couldn't remember what. Dr. Morrison said, the dreams were her subconscious trying to recover buried memories. Emily just wanted them to stop. On Sophie's 10th visit, she brought something unexpected, a shoebox full of old photos from Papa. Sophie signed. "He thought you might want them, but I should give them to you, not him. Less pressure." Emily opened the box with trembling hands. Inside were dozens of photos of baby Catherine, in a high chair covered in birthday cake, splashing in a kiddie pool, asleep on someone's shoulder, and in many of them, a beautiful woman with dark hair and warm eyes. "Isabel, my mother," Emily whispered. Sophie nodded, moving to sit beside her on the couch. Together they went through the photos one by one. Sophie signed stories she'd been told, about the birthday parties, the holidays, the ordinary moments of a family that had been whole once. One photo stopped Emily cold. It showed Isabel, very pregnant, signing to tiny Catherine who sat on her lap. The caption on the back read, "Teaching Katie signs for her baby sister, May 2015. She was teaching me to talk to you," Emily said, her voice breaking. "Before you were even born, she was preparing me to be your sister." Sophie's eyes filled with tears. "I wish I'd known her," she signed. "Me too." And for the first time, Emily meant it. She couldn't remember Isabel, but looking at these photos, seeing the love in every frame, she felt the loss, not of the mother she'd known, but of the mother she'd been stolen from. That night, Emily called Michael for the first time voluntarily. "Hello," he answered on the first ring, voice tight with hope and anxiety. "The photos," Emily said. "Thank you for the photos. Sophie thought it might help. I didn't want to overwhelm you. Can you tell me about her? About Isabel?" The question hurt to ask, but Emily needed to know. Not the big things, the small things. What made her laugh, what she sang in the shower, how she took her coffee. Michael was quiet for so long Emily thought he'd hung up. Then his voice came through, rough with emotion. She sang old jazz standards, Billie Holiday mostly. Her coffee was more sugar and cream than actual coffee. I used to tease her about it. She laughed at terrible puns, the kind that made everyone else groan. And she loved jasmine. Had a whole garden of it at the mansion. Said it reminded her of her grandmother. Jasmine, the scent from Emily's fragmented memories. She sounds wonderful, Emily whispered. She was, and she would have loved who you've become, Catherine. Emily, whoever you are, she would have been so proud of your strength. Emily wanted to believe that, but pride felt like too much to hope for when guilt was so much easier to carry. I'm trying, she said finally. I know I'm difficult. I know I keep pushing you away, but I'm trying. I know, and that's enough. That's more than enough. They talked for another hour. Careful, halting conversation about nothing important. Emily's apartment, Michael's work, Sophie's latest school project, building a bridge brick by careful brick. When Emily finally hung up, she felt something she hadn't felt in weeks. Hope, fragile and small. But there, maybe this could work. Maybe they could figure out how to be a family, even a broken, complicated, non-traditional one. She fell asleep looking at the photos. Isabel's face, the last thing she saw before dreams pulled her under. And for once, the dreams weren't nightmares. Emily was starting to believe things might actually be okay. She'd finished her last shift at the Emerald Grand, said awkward goodbyes to the few co-workers who'd remained civil, and walked out of that marble palace for the last time as an employee. The relief was overwhelming. She'd even agreed to have dinner at the mansion, her first time visiting the place where she'd supposedly lived as a child. Sophie had been ecstatic, planning the menu, choosing which room to show Emily first, practicing the signs she wanted to teach her. It was supposed to be a step forward, a new beginning. Then the investigators delivered their final report. Michael called her at 9 a.m, his voice strange, hollow. Can you come to my office now, please? What's wrong? Just, please come. Emily's stomach dropped. She'd learned to recognize that tone. It meant bad news, the kind that couldn't be softened or delayed. She arrived at Hayes International within the hour. Michael's assistant waved her through without the usual pleasantries, her face carefully neutral. Bad sign. Michael was standing at his window, staring out at the city. He didn't turn when she entered. Michael, they found something. His voice was flat. The investigators? Security footage from the hotel, from 5 months before we met. Emily's pulse quickened. Okay, sit down. I'd rather stand. Michael finally turned. He looked like he'd aged 10 years overnight. Please, Catherine. Emily. Just sit. The use of both names scared her more than anything else. She sat. Michael pulled up a video file on his computer, then turned the monitor so she could see. This is from March 12th, the main lobby, around 3 p.m. He hit play. The footage was crystal clear. High-end security cameras covering every angle. Emily saw herself immediately, on her hands and knees, scrubbing the marble floor near the main entrance. She was wearing her uniform, hair pulled back, invisible to the stream of guests moving around her. Then Michael appeared in the frame, earlier version, slightly less haggard, talking on his phone while carrying a leather briefcase, walking fast, distracted, important. He was heading straight toward Emily, not looking down. Emily watched herself glance up, start to move out of the way. Not fast enough. Michael's expensive shoe came down directly on her hand, the one stretched out to brace herself as she scrubbed. The impact was visible even in the footage, Emily's whole body jerking from the pain. Present day, Emily gasped, her own hand clenching reflexively. On screen. Past Michael didn't stop, didn't look down, didn't even break stride, just kept walking, kept talking on his phone, completely oblivious to the person he'd just stepped on. Past Emily stayed frozen for a moment, staring at her crushed hand. Then she curled into herself, cradling it against her chest. The camera angle caught her face clearly. The pain, the humiliation, the tears she was fighting to hold back. She was invisible, less than human, an obstacle he'd stepped over like she was nothing. Michael stopped the video. The silence in the office was deafening. 5 months, Emily whispered. I was there 5 months before Sophie got lost. We crossed paths 5 months earlier. I stepped on you. Michael's voice cracked. My own daughter was on her knees scrubbing a floor, and I stepped on her hand and didn't even notice. Didn't apologize. Didn't see you. Emily couldn't breathe. She'd known intellectually that they'd crossed paths before that day with Sophie, 8 months working at his hotel. Of course, they'd been in the same space. But seeing it, witnessing the casual cruelty of his obliviousness, watching herself be literally trampled, I need to leave. She stood abruptly. Wait, no! Her voice came out harsh, raw. No, I need to leave right now. Please, let me explain. Explain what? Emily whirled on him, and 18 years of rage finally exploded. Explain how you stepped on me like I was garbage, how you didn't even look down to see if I was okay, how I was invisible to you even when I was right under your feet. I didn't know. You didn't care. That's the point. You didn't care enough to look, to see, to notice that the person scrubbing your floors was a human being who might matter. Emily's hands were shaking. Do you know what that feels like? To be so beneath someone's notice that they can literally step on you and keep walking. I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't fix it. She was shouting now. Years of being invisible pouring out. Sorry doesn't give me back 18 years of being alone and scared and worthless. Sorry doesn't bring back Isabel or the childhood I should have had, or the mother who died thinking I was gone forever when I was right here, right in your city, cleaning your hotel. Michael looked like she'd physically struck him. I know, God, Catherine, I know. I've watched that footage 100 times since this morning. I can't stop seeing it. I made myself watch it over and over because I deserve to see what I did, what I've become. I was 4 years old when I was taken. Emily's voice dropped to something cold and deadly quiet. 4. And you spent 18 years looking for me with all your money and resources and investigators. But when I was finally right in front of you, working in your building, you stepped on me. You didn't see me, because people like you never see people like me. We're invisible. We're nothing. You're not nothing. You're my daughter. Am I? Emily laughed bitterly. Because that footage sure as hell doesn't show a father looking for his lost child. It shows a rich man too important to notice the cleaning staff, too busy to see the people who make his perfect life possible. Michael sank into his chair, his face in his hands. You're right. You're absolutely right. And I have no defense, no excuse. I failed you twice. Once when you were taken, and again when you were right there, and I didn't see you. Emily watched him break down and felt nothing. No sympathy, no forgiveness, just a vast emptiness where connection should have been. The dinner tonight, she said. I'm not coming. Please. I can't look at you right now. I can't be in a room with you and pretend this is okay, that we're building something, that this can be fixed. What about Sophie? The mention of her sister made Emily pause. Sophie, who was probably setting the table right now, who'd spent days planning this dinner, who believed Emily was finally coming home. Tell her I'm sick. Tell her anything, but I can't. Emily's voice broke. I can't do this right now. She left before Michael could respond, nearly running to the elevator. The building felt suffocating. Every marble surface and expensive fixture, a reminder of the world that had made her invisible. Her phone rang before she even made it to the subway. Michael. She rejected the call. It rang again, rejected, again and again and again, until she finally blocked his number. Back at her apartment, Emily pulled out her laptop with shaking hands. The video had leaked already. Of course it had. Someone always leaked everything. Her email was flooded with messages from journalists, her social media accounts exploding with comments and tags. The headlines were brutal. Billionaire steps on long-lost daughter, doesn't notice. Invisible heiress. Video shows Michael Hayes literally trampling his missing daughter. Unconscious cruelty. The footage that exposes elite indifference. The comment sections were worse. Half the internet calling Michael a monster, the other half calling Emily a gold digger who'd probably staged the whole thing. Everyone had an opinion about her trauma, her pain, her life. Someone had even made memes. Her face, crying on that floor, with captions about class warfare and privilege, her suffering as entertainment. Emily slammed the laptop shut and screamed, just screamed until her throat was raw and her voice gave out. Then she grabbed her phone and unblocked one number. Not Michael. Sophie. The video call connected immediately. Sophie's face appeared, eyes red from crying. "Where are you?" She signed frantically. "Papa said you're not coming." "Why? What's wrong?" "Did you see the video?" Emily asked, knowing Sophie would read her lips. Sophie nodded miserably. "I can't do this right now. I can't be in that house. Can't sit at that table and pretend everything's okay when it's not. When it might never be. Is it because of what Papa did?" "He stepped on me, Sophie. Literally stepped on my hand and didn't even notice I existed. He didn't know it was you. He didn't know I was a person worth noticing," Emily corrected. "That's worse." Sophie was crying now, silent tears streaming down her face. "Please don't leave us. Please, I know Papa messed up. I know everything's broken, but please don't leave me." The words shattered something in Emily's chest, because Sophie was innocent in all this. Sophie hadn't stepped on anyone, hadn't been blind to suffering, hadn't failed. Sophie was just a 10-year-old girl who wanted her sister. "I'm not leaving you," Emily said, her own tears starting. "Never you, but I need time away from Michael. I need to figure out if I can ever forgive him for this." "Can you?" Emily looked at Sophie's hopeful face and couldn't lie. "I don't know, sweetie. I honestly don't know." They talked for another hour. Sophie in the mansion dining room where a dinner for 3 sat untouched. Emily in her apartment where loneliness echoed off bare walls, building a bridge while the foundation crumbled beneath them. When they finally hung up, Emily sat in the dark and wondered if some things were too broken to fix. If some gaps were too wide to bridge. If some wounds cut too deep to ever truly heal. She thought about Margaret Price, desperate and broken, destroying everything in a doomed attempt to save her son. About Isabel, dying of grief while Emily scrubbed floors miles away. About Michael, who'd stepped on his daughter and kept walking. About herself, Emily Carter, Catherine Hayes, whoever she was, and whether that person could survive this. 3 weeks passed in painful limbo. Emily ignored Michael's calls, his emails, his letters delivered by courier. She saw Sophie twice a week, always at neutral locations, always without Michael present. The little girl was trying so hard to hold everything together, and it broke Emily's heart. But she couldn't forgive him. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw that footage, his shoe coming down on her hand, his complete obliviousness, the casual cruelty of wealth. Dr. Morrison said she was processing trauma, that anger was a natural stage of grief, but it didn't feel like a stage. It felt permanent, like something fundamental had broken inside her that could never be repaired. Then the lawyers appeared. Not Michael's lawyers, his distant relatives, cousins Emily had never met, aunts and uncles who'd never bothered to visit during her childhood because there'd been no childhood, no her to visit. Now suddenly they cared very deeply about the Hayes family welfare. The court petition arrived on a Tuesday morning, a request to declare Michael Hayes mentally unfit to manage his affairs, due to erratic behavior, depression, and impaired judgment following recent traumatic events. They wanted a conservatorship, control of his assets, and they wanted Emily declared mentally incompetent as well. Severe identity disorder and psychological instability requiring intensive psychiatric treatment in a controlled environment. They wanted to lock them both away and take everything. Emily's hands shook as she read the documents. She'd spent 3 weeks hating Michael, avoiding him, wishing she'd never taken that DNA test. But this was something else entirely. She called him for the first time since the video. "Catherine." His voice was raw, desperate. He'd clearly been crying. "Thank God I've been trying to reach you. I got the court papers." Silence then. "You know about that. They're trying to have us both declared incompetent. They want to take everything. Your company, my trust fund." "Custody of Sophie?" Emily's voice hardened. "Tell me you're fighting this." "Of course I'm fighting it. My lawyers are..." He stopped. "Wait, you said us. Does that mean..." "It means I'm not letting these vultures destroy what's left of this family," Emily snapped. "I might hate you right now, but I hate them more, and I'm not letting anyone take Sophie." "Emily, don't. Just tell me what we need to do." What they needed to do, according to Michael's legal team, was present a united front, show the court they were both stable, functional, and capable, which meant Emily would have to testify, would have to stand in front of a judge and declare that Michael Hayes was fit to manage his affairs, the man who'd stepped on her and kept walking. "I can't do this," Emily said during an emergency session with Dr. Morrison. "I can't get on a stand and defend him. Can you let Sophie be taken from you both?" Dr. Morrison asked gently. That was the knife that cut through everything. Sophie, 10 years old, deaf, already dealing with a world that dismissed her. If those relatives got custody, she'd become a pawn, a means to an end, the way Emily had been to Margaret. "No," Emily whispered. "I can't let that happen." The hearing was set for the following week. Emily spent those days preparing with lawyers, rehearsing her testimony, trying to find some way to be convincing when every fiber of her being wanted to scream. On the morning of the hearing, she put on one of the designer outfits Michael had bought her, the ones she'd shoved in the back of her closet and tried to forget. Today she needed to look like Catherine Hayes, heir and daughter, not Emily Carter, the angry orphan. Michael was waiting outside the courthouse. He looked terrible, gaunt, pale, haunted. Their eyes met, and Emily saw everything there: guilt, grief, desperate hope. "Thank you for coming," he said quietly. "I'm doing this for Sophie, not for you." "I know." They walked into the courthouse side by side, not touching, the space between them filled with everything unsaid. The relatives were already there, a whole pack of them, looking polished and concerned and completely fake. They watched Emily enter with calculating eyes, probably trying to figure out if she was an asset or a liability. The hearing lasted 4 hours. The relative's lawyer painted Michael as an unstable man who'd let grief cloud his judgment, who'd accepted a stranger as his daughter based on flimsy evidence, who was emotionally compromised and financially reckless. They brought up his drinking after Isabel's death, his obsessive spending on investigators, his recent withdrawal from company affairs. They made him sound like a madman. Then they turned on Emily, called her an opportunist who'd manipulated a grieving father, suggested the DNA might have been tampered with, implied she was mentally unstable, citing her refusal to move into the mansion, her continued isolation, her erratic emotional state. "Miss Carter, or Miss Hayes, whatever you're calling yourself today, isn't it true that you've refused contact with Mr. Hayes for the past 3 weeks?" the lawyer asked with mock concern. "Yes," Emily said steadily. "And isn't it true you've expressed anger and resentment toward him?" "Yes." "Would you say you're mentally stable enough to make rational decisions about your own welfare?" Emily looked the lawyer dead in the eye. "I'm stable enough to know when someone's trying to manipulate me. And you're not doing this out of concern for anyone's welfare. You're doing it for money." The courtroom rippled with murmurs. The judge gavelled for silence. "Miss Hayes," the judge said, and Emily noticed he used Hayes, not Carter. "These are serious allegations. Do you believe your father is fit to manage his affairs?" This was it, the moment that mattered. Emily could destroy Michael with a single word, could let him drown in the consequences of his blindness, could finally make him pay for all those years of not seeing her. She looked at him, really looked, and saw not the billionaire who'd stepped on a cleaning woman, but a broken father who'd lost everything that mattered and was trying desperately to put the pieces back together. "Yes," Emily said clearly, "I believe he's fit, even though you've been estranged from him. Being angry at someone doesn't make them incompetent. It makes them human." Emily's voice grew stronger. "My father," the word still felt strange, but she forced it out, "made mistakes. He was blind to things he should have seen, but he spent 18 years searching for me. And when he found me, he tried. He's still trying. That's not incompetence. That's love." Michael made a sound like a sob. "And what about the allegations regarding your own mental state?" the judge asked. "I'm traumatized," Emily said bluntly. "I was kidnapped as a child, raised thinking I was nobody, and then discovered my entire life was built on lies. Yeah, I'm struggling, but struggling isn't the same as being incompetent, and I'm not going to let anyone use my trauma as an excuse to take away my family." The judge studied her for a long moment, then turned to the relative's lawyer. "I've heard enough. Unless you have actual evidence of incompetence beyond they're having a rough time, I'm inclined to dismiss this petition." The lawyer sputtered about needing more time, more evaluation, more something. The judge wasn't having it. "Petition denied. Mr. Hayes retains full control of his affairs." Miss Hayes's trust fund remains under her control, and the judge fixed the relatives with a stern look. If I see another frivolous petition from this family, I'll consider sanctions for wasting the court's time. The gavel came down. It was over. The relatives filed out, shooting murderous glares. Emily didn't care. She'd won. They'd won. Outside the courthouse, Michael turned to her. "Thank you. I know you didn't want to. I didn't do it for you," Emily interrupted. Then, softer. "Except maybe I did. A little. I don't deserve your forgiveness." "No, you don't." Emily looked up at the sky, trying to find words for what she was feeling. "But maybe forgiveness isn't about deserving. Maybe it's about choosing not to be destroyed by anger. I would understand if you never forgave me." "I know." Emily finally met his eyes. "But I saw something in there. When I was testifying, you weren't just relieved for yourself. You were relieved for me. You'd rather have lost everything than see me hurt by those people." "Of course," Michael said fiercely. "You're my daughter. I'd burn the whole empire down before I let anyone hurt you." Something cracked in Emily's chest. The wall she'd built, the protective shield of rage. It didn't crumble completely, but it fractured enough to let light through. "I need to tell you something," she said, "and I need you to just listen. Don't apologize. Don't explain. Just listen." Michael nodded. "That video destroyed me, not because you stepped on my hand. That was just physical pain, but because it proved what I'd always feared was true, that I was invisible, that even to the people who should have loved me most, I didn't matter enough to be seen." Emily's voice shook. "And I can't just get over that. It's going to take time, maybe years, maybe forever. I understand. But," Emily continued, "I also realized something today. I'm tired of being angry. I'm tired of being alone. And Sophie needs us. Both of us. Not broken and separate, but trying, together." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying," Emily took a deep breath, "I'm saying I want to try, actually try. Family dinners, therapy sessions, the whole complicated mess. I can't promise I won't be angry sometimes. I can't promise I'll ever fully forgive you. But I can promise I'll try." Michael's eyes filled with tears. "That's more than I deserve." "Yeah," Emily agreed. "It is." They stood there on the courthouse steps, father and daughter, broken and beginning to mend. It wasn't a happy ending, but it was a start. The breakthrough came on a Thursday night, almost exactly 1 year after that first meeting at the Emerald Grand Hotel. Emily had moved into the mansion 3 months earlier, not into her old childhood bedroom, which Michael had preserved like a shrine, but into a guest suite she'd decorated herself. Neutral territory, a space that belonged to Emily Catherine, not the ghost of the 4-year-old who'd been taken. Progress had been slow, painful. 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Some days Emily could sit across from Michael at dinner and almost feel normal. Other days, the sight of him filled her with rage so sudden and visceral she had to leave the room. Dr. Morrison said this was healthy, that healing wasn't linear, that Emily was doing better than anyone could reasonably expect. Emily wasn't sure she believed it, but Sophie made everything bearable. Sophie, who burst into Emily's room every morning with new signs to teach, who dragged her to deaf community events and introduced her to a whole world Emily had never known existed, who loved her so fiercely and unconditionally that Emily sometimes couldn't breathe from the weight of it. Tonight was supposed to be a quiet evening. Michael was working late at the office. He'd been trying to rebuild relationships with his board after months of instability. Sophie had a school project. Emily had planned to read, maybe watch a movie, avoid thinking about the fact that tomorrow marked exactly 1 year since her life had exploded. But then her phone rang. Michael, voice tight with barely controlled panic. "I can't find Sophie." Emily's blood went cold. "What do you mean you can't find her? She was supposed to be home an hour ago." The car service said they dropped her off at school this morning, but she never got in the car for pickup. "I've called her friends, checked her iPad location. Nothing. It's like she just vanished." No, not again. Not Sophie." "I'm coming to you," Emily said, already grabbing her jacket. "Call the police now." She made it to the Hayes International building in 20 minutes, breaking every traffic law. Michael was in his office, on the phone with what sounded like the NYPD, his face gray with terror. When he saw Emily, Something in his expression cracked. "They're treating it as a runaway. Say she probably just went to a friend's house and forgot to tell us. They won't start a real search for 48 hours. 48 hours. She's 10 years old and deaf. She could be..." Emily couldn't finish the sentence, couldn't voice the fear that was clawing at her throat. Michael's hands were shaking. "I can't lose her too. I can't. Catherine, if something happens to Sophie, I won't survive it." The use of her birth name, the raw terror in his voice, it cut through everything. All the anger, all the resentment, all the barriers Emily had built. None of it mattered. Only Sophie mattered. "We'll find her," Emily said fiercely. "I don't care what the police say. We'll find her." They spent the next 3 hours searching. Called every friend, every teacher, every parent from Sophie's class, checked the school, the nearby parks, the library Sophie loved. Nothing. It was like she'd vanished into thin air. At 9 p.m., Emily's phone buzzed. A notification from Instagram. Sophie had posted something. Emily's hands shook as she opened it. The photo showed the interior of what looked like a janitorial closet. Mops, cleaning supplies, industrial sink. The caption read, "Found where it started, waiting." "Michael." Emily shoved the phone at him. "Look, she's at the hotel. The Emerald Grand. She has to be." They ran. The night manager at the Emerald Grand looked confused when Emily and Michael burst through the doors demanding access to the service areas. "Sir, it's after hours. The cleaning staff is working. My daughter is somewhere in this building," Michael said, his voice carrying the authority of a man who owned the place. "Open every door, now." It took 20 minutes of searching before they found her. Sophie was sitting in a storage closet on the 10th floor, the same floor where Emily had been working that day a year ago. She'd somehow gotten past security, made her way to the service corridors, and settled in to wait. When Emily pushed open the door, Sophie looked up with red, swollen eyes. She'd been crying. "Sophie, what were you thinking?" Emily demanded, relief making her voice sharp. "We've been terrified. Why would you..." Sophie's hands moved rapidly, and for once, Emily didn't need Michael to translate. She'd learned enough sign language over the past year to understand. "I needed to understand. Needed to see where you were, where we found each other." Michael dropped to his knees beside his daughter. "You can't just disappear like that after what happened to Catherine, after..." His voice broke. "I thought I'd lost you too." Sophie signed something, and this time Emily did need translation. "She says she's sorry," Michael said, tears streaming down his face. "She says she just wanted to understand what it felt like, to be invisible like you were." Emily felt like she'd been punched in the chest. "What?" Sophie signed again. More frantically now, Michael translated, his voice shaking. "She says everyone treats you like you're broken, like the year you spent being invisible was something to forget, to move past. But she wanted to understand, wanted to know what it was like for you, scrubbing these floors, being nobody, because that's part of who you are too, the Emily part, and she loves that part as much as she loves the Catherine part." Something in Emily shattered. All the carefully constructed walls, all the protective anger, all the fear. It crumbled. She pulled Sophie into her arms and held her tight. This little girl who'd risked everything to understand her sister's pain. "Don't you ever scare me like that again," Emily whispered into Sophie's hair. "I can't lose you. You're the best thing that came from all of this. Her voice broke. "You're my sister, my family, and I love you so much." Sophie was crying again, but this time they were good tears. She pulled back just enough to sign, "I love you too, Emily and Catherine both." Michael wrapped his arms around both of them, and for a moment they stayed there, a broken family in a janitor's closet in a luxury hotel, holding each other like drowning people grabbing lifelines. "I see you now," Michael said suddenly, looking at Emily with devastating clarity. "I see you, Catherine, Emily. Whoever you are in this moment, I see how strong you are, how you survived the impossible, how you fought so hard to figure out who you are when everything was stolen from you. I see you, and I'm in awe of you." Emily looked at him, really looked, and saw not the man who'd stepped on her hand, not the father who'd failed to protect her, but a broken person trying desperately to be better, just like her. "I see you too," she whispered. "And I don't just see the mistakes. I see someone who loved his daughter so much he spent 18 years searching. Someone who's trying so hard to make things right even when I make it impossible. Someone who's not perfect, but who's here, who's trying." Sophie signed something, and both Emily and Michael laughed through their tears. "She says we're all very emotional and dramatic," Michael translated, "and that we should go home now because she's hungry and this closet smells like bleach." Emily laughed. A real laugh. The kind that came from deep in her chest. The kind she hadn't felt in months. "She's right. Let's go home." Home. The word didn't feel wrong anymore. They left the hotel together, not through the service entrance where Emily used to exit, but through the main lobby, past the marble floors she'd once scrubbed, past the fountain where Sophie had been lost and found, past the ghosts of who they'd all been before. In the car, Sophie fell asleep against Emily's shoulder. Michael drove carefully, glancing in the rearview mirror every few seconds like he needed to confirm they were still there. "I have something for you," he said quietly, not wanting to wake Sophie. "I was going to give it to you tomorrow, on the anniversary, but after tonight, it feels right now." "What is it?" "You'll see when we get home, at the mansion." After Sophie had been tucked into bed with promises to discuss proper communication about whereabouts in the morning, Michael led Emily to his study. He pulled out a small velvet box from his desk drawer. Inside was a necklace, an emerald pendant on a delicate gold chain. The emerald was deep green, flawless, clearly worth a fortune. "This was Isabel's," Michael said softly. "She wore it every day, after she died. I couldn't bear to look at it. I locked it away, but now..." He carefully lifted the necklace from the box. "Now I think she'd want you to have it. Not as Catherine, the daughter she lost, but as the woman you've become. The survivor, the fighter, the person who loved her daughter Sophie enough to piece together a broken family." Emily's hands trembled as she touched the pendant. "I don't remember her. I wish I did, but I don't." "Maybe that's okay," Michael said. "Maybe it's enough that she loved you, that she would have been so proud of who you became despite everything." Emily turned so Michael could fasten the necklace. The emerald settled just above her heart, warm from his hands. "Thank you," she whispered, "for not giving up on me, even when I pushed you away." "Thank you for coming back," Michael replied, "for giving us a chance, for being brave enough to try." They stood in the study, father and daughter, no longer strangers, but not quite whole either. Somewhere in between, healing. And for the first time since that DNA test, Emily felt something that might have been peace. 1 year and 11 months after that rainy Thursday afternoon when Emily Carter's world had shattered and reformed, the Hayes family gathered on the mansion's rooftop terrace under a December sky full of stars. It was a private ceremony. No press, no distant relatives, no one who didn't truly matter. Just Emily, Michael, Sophie, Dr. Morrison, Sister Agnes from St. Mary's, and a few of Sophie's friends from the deaf community who'd become Emily's friends too. The occasion was simple but profound. Emily was legally changing her name, not back to Catherine Hayes as everyone had expected, and not staying Emily Carter, the identity built on lies. Instead, she was becoming something new, Catherine Emily Hayes. "Both names," she'd explained to Dr. Morrison weeks earlier, "because I'm both people, the girl who was taken and the woman who survived. I don't have to choose anymore." The ceremony was brief. A lawyer reading official documents, Emily signing her new name for the first time, Michael's hand squeezing her shoulder as tears rolled down his face. When it was done, Sister Agnes blessed her with a prayer in Spanish that Emily didn't entirely understand, but felt in her bones. "You've become yourself," the old nun said, pulling Emily into a hug. "That's the hardest thing anyone can do. I'm so proud of you, child." After the legal formalities, they moved to the part Emily had planned herself. The terrace had been transformed. String lights hanging overhead, a table set for dinner, and in the center, a memorial for Isabel. Photos of her surrounded by jasmine flowers, their scent perfuming the cold December air. Emily approached the memorial slowly, Michael and Sophie flanking her on either side. She touched the largest photo, Isabel holding baby Catherine, both of them laughing at something off camera, the image of a love Emily couldn't remember but had spent 2 years learning to feel. I wish I remembered you, Emily said softly, speaking to the photo as if Isabel could hear. I wish I could tell you about the lullabies you sang or the way you smelled or how it felt when you held me. But I can't. That was stolen from me, and I'll never get it back. She took a breath, feeling Michael tense beside her, but she needed to say this. What I can tell you is that you made me strong, somehow, even though you died thinking I was lost. You gave me something that survived. The ability to love, to fight, to refuse to disappear even when the world wanted me to be invisible. Emily's voice grew steadier. You gave me Sophie, the best sister anyone could ask for. And you gave me him, she gestured to Michael, a father who's imperfect and human and who makes mistakes, but who never stopped loving me, even when he didn't know where I was. Michael made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob. So thank you, Emily continued. Thank you for the 4 years I had with you, even if I can't remember them. Thank you for teaching me sign language so I could find my sister 18 years later. Thank you for loving me enough that your absence left a hole I've spent 2 years learning to fill. Sophie's hands moved in sign. She would love you so much. I hope so, Emily whispered. Then, louder, I hope she'd be proud of who I became, who I'm still becoming. She pulled out a small box from her pocket. Inside was a bracelet. Cheap plastic with faded colors. The one she'd been wearing when Margaret left her at St. Mary's. The only thing she'd had from her life before. I've been holding on to this for 18 years, Emily said, carrying it like it was the only proof I existed. But I don't need it anymore. I know who I am now. She placed the bracelet among the jasmine flowers. A final goodbye to Emily Carter, the lost girl. Not erasing her, but honoring her. Letting her rest. Sophie stepped forward and added something of her own. A drawing she'd made of the 3 of them. All holding hands, with Isabel watching from a cloud above. It was childish and perfect, and made everyone cry. Michael was last. He pulled out a letter, yellowed with age, the paper soft from being folded and unfolded countless times. Isabel wrote this, he said, his voice breaking. 6 months before she died. She made me promise not to read it unless we found Catherine, or unless he couldn't finish. Emily's heart stopped. You've been carrying this for 10 years. I couldn't bring myself to open it. If I opened it without you, it meant accepting you were really gone. Michael's hands shook as he unfolded the letter. But now you're here, so maybe it's time, he read aloud. And Isabel's words, written in grief and hope and desperate love, filled the December night. My dearest Catherine, if you're reading this, it means one of 2 things. Either you've been found, or I'm gone, and your father is reading this to you. I pray it's the first. I pray with everything I have that you'll come home to us. I don't know where you are tonight. I don't know if you're scared or safe, if you remember us, or if the trauma took those memories away. But I know you're alive. A mother knows. I feel you out there somewhere. My brave, beautiful girl. If you're afraid, know that we never stopped looking. If you're angry, know that we never gave up. If you're lost, know that you always had a home waiting for you. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you. I'm sorry I failed as a mother in the most fundamental way. That guilt is killing me. Literally, the doctors say. Though they use fancier words, my heart is breaking because you're not here. But here's what I need you to know. None of this is your fault. You were a child. You are a child. Whatever happened, whatever you had to do to survive, you are blameless. You are loved. You are wanted. I named your little sister Sophie, which means wisdom. I hope she'll be wise enough to find the happiness I couldn't. I hope you'll know her somehow. I hope she'll tell you how much I loved you, how I died loving you. Come home, my Catherine. However long it takes, however much you've changed. Come home. I'll be waiting, all my love, forever and always, Mama. By the time Michael finished, everyone on the terrace was crying. Emily felt like her chest had been cracked open, like Isabel's words had reached across death and time to hold her one last time. She knew, Emily whispered. She knew I'd come home eventually. She had faith, Sister Agnes said softly. Even when it killed her, she had faith. Emily looked at the memorial, at Isabel's smiling face, and felt something settle inside her, not the return of lost memories, but something better, acceptance, peace. "I'm home now, Mama," she said. "It took me 18 years, but I'm home." Sophie took Emily's hand, and Michael took the other. Together they made the sign Isabel had invented, 3 taps over the heart, a circle in the air. But Sophie added her modification from that night in the hotel closet, the one that had changed everything. She joined their hands together first, so the sign encompassed all 3 of them. Not, "I love you forever," but, "We love each other forever." A family, broken, rebuilt, imperfect, but real. They ate dinner under the stars, sharing stories about Isabel that Michael had locked away for years, about her terrible singing voice that she inflicted on everyone anyway, about her addiction to trashy reality TV, about the way she'd fought for disability rights after Sophie was born, becoming an advocate for deaf children. "She would have loved what you did," Michael told Emily, with the hotel. 6 months earlier, Emily had convinced Michael to rename the Emerald Grand. It was now Isabel's place, a luxury hotel that paid living wages, provided benefits, and required all staff to complete sensitivity training. Half the profits went to a foundation supporting orphanages and missing children organizations. Margaret's family got some of the money too, Emily added, for drug rehabilitation programs. What she did was unforgivable. But her son, Ethan, he was a victim too. Maybe if he'd had better options. "You're more forgiving than I could ever be," Michael said. "I'm trying to be," Emily corrected. "Some days it's easier than others." As midnight approached, Sophie announced she had a surprise. She'd been taking guitar lessons secretly for months, and now she performed. A song she'd written herself, in sign language set to music her friends played. The lyrics appeared on a screen she'd set up, translated from ASL. "They say blood makes a family, but I think love does more. You found me in the silence. I found you on the floor. We built this from the broken, from the pieces left behind. 2 sisters, 1 father, learning how to be kind." When she finished, Emily pulled Sophie into a hug so tight the girl squeaked in protest. "That was beautiful. You're beautiful. I'm so lucky you're my sister." Sophie signed back. "I'm the lucky one. You taught me what strength looks like." As the party wound down and guests departed, Emily found herself alone on the terrace with Michael. The lights of New York stretched before them, millions of lives playing out in the darkness. "I never thanked you properly," Michael said, "for giving me a second chance, for not giving up on us even when you had every reason to." "I almost did," Emily admitted. "After that video, after seeing how invisible I was to you, I almost walked away forever." "What stopped you?" "Sophie, and," Emily hesitated, "I realized something. Being invisible wasn't your unique failure. It was society's. You didn't see me because you'd been taught not to see people like me, and I could hate you for that. Or I could try to change things so no one else gets overlooked. You're wiser than I'll ever be. I learned from the best," Emily said, touching the emerald necklace. "Isabel's letter. She forgave herself for not protecting me. I think I need to forgive myself too, for not remembering, for taking so long to accept this family, for still struggling sometimes." "We're all still struggling," Michael said. "But we're struggling together now. That's what matters." Emily looked up at the stars, thinking about Margaret and Ethan, about Isabel and baby Catherine, about Emily Carter and Catherine Hayes, and the woman she'd become by fusing them both. "I'm happy," she said, surprised by the truth of it. "For the first time in my entire life, I'm actually happy." Michael's smile was brighter than all the city lights combined. "Me too, daughter, me too." They stood in comfortable silence until Sophie found them, demanding hot chocolate and a movie before bed. As they headed inside, Emily between her father and sister, flanked by love she'd once believed impossible, she felt Isabel's presence like a blessing. The lost had been found, the broken had been mended, the invisible had been seen, and the Hayes family, after 18 years of grief, was finally truly home.